What is a PLC? A professional learning community is a collaboration of teachers, administrators, parents, and students who work together to seek out best practices, test them in the classroom, continuously improve processes, and focus on results.
A PLC is a response to the question, what do you do when a student does not learn? Traditionally, it has been left to the discretion of individual teachers creating a kind of educational lottery for students. This approach is neither effective nor equitable. The authors suggest, instead, schools should provide a multi-layered collective response to student difficulty with learning. Schools should have in place a plan for monitoring a student's learning and forms or degrees of intervention that is prompt, consistent, and effective.
The first idea is that the fundamental purpose of the school is to ensure that all students learn rather than to see to it that all students are taught. The second main idea is helping all students requires a collaborative culture and collective effort. And thirdly, schools will be unable to monitor their effectiveness in helping all students learn unless they orient their results in a timely and accessible manner. For the system for intervention that the PLCs implement to be successful, schools must lay the proper groundwork for intervention. Intervention will have a powerful impact on student achievement when the educators in a school first recognize their shared responsibility to have students learn instead of simply teaching them. Secondly, when educators are put into collaborative teams where members work interdependently to achieve common, result-oriented goals, while each member will accept the same accountability. Thirdly, work together collaboratively to establish the essential knowledge, skills, and dispositions all students must learn in each unit of instruction. Fourth, create pacing guides or curriculum maps each teacher will follow to clarify when the essential skills will be taught. Fifth, develop frequent, common formative assessments to monitor the learning of each student and provide teachers with relevant feedback. Sixth, clarify the common standard of proficiency each student must demonstrate in order to be deemed proficient and/or the agreed upon criteria the members of the team will use to assess the quality of each student's work. And lastly, have access to timely and accurate information regarding student learning in order to identify students who need support, enrichment, and the strategies that appear to be the most effective in helping all students learn.
In order to properly maintain a PLC, a response to intervention must provide additional time and support through an encompassing plan. Educational researcher Robert Marzano states that schools that are highly effective produce results that almost entirely overcome the effects of student background. Richard Dufour writes, "This challenges the long-standing belief that only those who had won the genetic lottery were capable of high levels of learning." In other words, schools essentially have control over how much and how well students learn and retain the core curriculum. The PLC concept also acts as an alternative education reform system to No Child Left Behind. No Child Left Behind has the rationale that educators have always known how to help all students learn, but have been too disinterested in their students or too lazy to put forth the necessary effort, which we all know is not true. In the book, the authors mention Lake Ridge Junior High School in Utah, a school that has improved through their intervention system, which holds as its key points on intervention the following concepts. The first point is that the students should receive help and intervention at the first signs of difficulty. Next, it should require and encourage students to seek additional support in order to eventually gain success. However, if the student isn't successful at all, then it should not even be an option. Students should be guaranteed that they will actually receive time and support from their supporting teachers, not just one teacher singularly. This is a school-wide plan. It is vital that this intervention be during the school day to ensure that students will have access and will actually attend these programs. The people who lead the intervention programs should be qualified teachers instead of simply having students be tutored in necessary subject areas. Throughout this whole process, the student must recognize the connection between meeting the responsibilities of his or herself and the privileges that go along with them. This system replaces a fixed mindset of a student and continuously incorporates a growth mindset. That is, the student will not shut down just because learning is not easy, Instead, they will understand that learning may be difficult, but that they must work hard in order to obtain success. The intervention program should encourage students to discover their own abilities and talents by way of their own effort.
For those who question why we should have professional learning communities, I think the answer is relatively simple. There's never been greater consensus about what it's going to require of educators in order to improve student learning in all of their schools. Virtually all of the leading educational researchers in North America and all of our professional organizations have agreed that our best hope for improving schools is to focus on developing the capacity of the people within the schools. There's just been an international study done by the McKinsey Group by Sir Michael Barber where they looked at the highest performing school systems in all of the world. And they said that the one thing that those systems had in common was an understanding that a system can only be as good as the people within it. And so in those high-performing systems, there was a conscious effort made to develop the capacity of those people, to understand that the only way we're going to improve schools is by improving the quality of the instruction that students receive every single day through the collective efforts of their teachers and school leaders. So to those who had asked the question, why PLCs, I would ask, why not? What else is out there that has such universal consensus in terms of its power to make a difference in the lives of students? The biggest obstacles that are interfering with schools moving from traditional schools to professional learning communities aren't really a lack of resources or some of the other external factors that we might point to. The biggest obstacle is overcoming our own traditions and the mythology that persists in education. Mythology that says things like the way to improve schools is by hiring heroic individual teachers who close their door and make a difference in the lives of their students and are sort of indifferent to what else is going on around the school. A mythology that says the real purpose of schooling is merely to give students the opportunity to learn rather to ensure that they learn. So there are some long-standing traditions in American education that we must confront, and we must overcome them if we are going to succeed in becoming professional learning communities and making a difference in the lives of our students. There are now over 150 different schools on the All Things PLC website, and every one of them represents a tremendous success story. It's hard to identify a single story that stands out. But if I had to pick one, I would probably go with the school district in Sanger, California, which is one of the first districts in California to go into program improvement and come under state sanctions. Led by the superintendent, Mark Johnson, who was recently named the National Superintendent of the Year by AASA, the district began to implement the PLC process district-wide. They adopted a mantra of no blaming the kids. What can we, the educators, do in order to create the conditions that will help our students learn at higher levels? There were certain things that were expected to happen in all of the schools. Teachers were expected to collaborate, to develop a guaranteed curriculum, to monitor student learning through common assessments, to have plans of intervention when students were struggling, and to have all of the educators throughout the system help one another learn in order to be more effective in whatever their respective responsibilities were, whether it was teaching or leading a building or leading the district. The results have been nothing short of phenomenal. It's one of the highest achieving districts in California in terms of the progress that it's made over the last 4 or 5 years. And Michael Fullen, who's looked at effective school systems all around the world, picked Sanger as one of 4 school systems in the world that he wanted to highlight in a video of successful district-wide implementation of school improvement. So there are many, many stories that warm our hearts and keep us inspired and motivated to continue doing our work. But Sanger is one that's particularly touching. They have over 80% poverty, 80% minority, and yet every year student achievement is improving in that district, in every school in the district. It's a wonderful story.
An example school the authors used to highlight the effectiveness of PLCs is Adlai Stevenson High School in Lincolnshire, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. The school is made up mostly of students from a middle-class background with low levels of poverty. Despite this, over a quarter of all students were on a remedial track, with over a third of the student body receiving a grade of D or below. Parents started seeking alternate educational options for their children outside of Stevenson High School. The school had trouble identifying students having difficulty and had a tendency to invoke remediation and place students in lower curricular tracks. The school also experienced difficulty in reporting student assessments to parents. The school, in response, adopted the PLC system to correct these discrepancies and improve student education and success. These schools switched from 2 9-week grading periods per semester to 3 6-week grading periods to allow a more timely assessment of student learning. The school also included the addition of a progress report at the midpoint of each 6-week grading period and the use of electronic grade books to more effectively monitor a student's learning. The school also created multiple levels and types of intervention, of which a few we will discuss. The school also took on a proactive form of intervention by recruiting middle school staffers to identify incoming high school freshmen who may need intervention and support when they enter high school. The school also created a summer course for incoming freshmen that taught them effective study skills to ease the transition from middle school to high school. The course was strongly recommended for any student who had received a grade of a D or lower in their middle school career. The school also created a pyramid of intervention to provide support and attention to students having difficulty in school. The school created a series of mentor programs for students during the school year that are both explicit and implicit. An example of the explicit is the Freshman Mentor Program, in which high school senior volunteers will be assigned 5 freshmen to mentor to help ease the transition to high school and provide a level of support. An implicit example is the Good Friend Program, in which a teacher or staffer takes a special interest in a student who has been classified as at-risk to provide additional support and attention in order to be successful. A student in the Good Friend Program is unaware they have been identified in this program. The key to these mentoring programs is the ability of teachers and students to develop a connection with each other and include students who have typically been alienated from school. The school also has in place optional tutoring available to all students, as well as mandatory tutoring for any student that has received a grade of a D or lower in a class. These tutoring sessions incorporated into the daily school schedule in order to create time for intervention and in order to make it non-optional. When confronted with this level of support, most students recognize that they will not be allowed to slack off and tend to decide to put forth sufficient effort to improve, even if it is just to ease attention from the school. Through these programs, the school created a foundational level of intervention and support for every student, which has led to increased student success and has caused Adlai Stevenson High School to receive numerous awards and distinctions.
The authors make sure to remind readers that the successful PLC schools discussed in the book were not created overnight and were the product of trial and error, the process of which is often messy and non-linear. They also express how the schools in the book can act as guides but should not be taken as models that can easily be transplanted and applied to other schools. Each school and staff must develop its own plan for meeting the needs of students in its own unique school. No 2 schools are the same, and neither are the students or the problems. The authors also emphasize the idea that schools can provide students with additional time and support. This idea relies more on determination than on additional resources. It is not necessary for a school to have a windfall of additional funding to implement such programs and ideas, but it is necessary for the staff of a school to express a willingness to challenge the traditional methods and roles of educators in schools. The authors also state that in order for a PLC intervention program to succeed, readers must not fall in love with a tree. They must embrace the whole forest. This means that a program such as the Good Friend program at Adlai Stevenson High School is a great program, but if it is not part of a broader system, it will not bring about a change in the culture of a school and the embracing of the PLC system. And finally, the authors write how they cannot overstate the fact that no system of intervention will ever compensate for bad teaching. PLCs are not just about making sure students have access to resources and support, but that teachers do as well to continually improve as educators and become more effective. Without this, the whole system of intervention can be put in jeopardy.